You're killing me, Smallz.
Hello, everyone. It's Olympic gold medalist Summer Sanders. Now, as a champion, I rarely settle for anything but the best. So, you guys get the best podcast for sports in the Philadelphia area. Killin' Me Smallz with Mike Small. Dude knows his sports, and it's going to be the absolute best. Enjoy.
The mellow opening today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Killin' Me Smallz podcast. I am your host, Mike Small. You can follow me on Twitter at Killin' Me Smallz 2. That's Killin' without the G, me Smallz with a Z, and the number 2, and I will follow you right back. Give us a rating and a review as you listen to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can now also listen to this podcast on YouTube, as we are part of the Painted Lines podcast network. Well, today's podcast is one that I've been excited about for a long time. As we approach Super Bowl Sunday, let's think back to 2017 when a guy named Nick Foles, yes, Nick Foles, found a way to lead the Philadelphia Eagles to the most improbable Super Bowl of all time. How did that happen? Was it magic? Was it luck? Or was it planning and preparation? And most importantly, having the right mindset? Well, today we talked to one of the premier sports psychologists in the nation, Dr. Kevin Elko. Dr. Elko worked with Foles. He also worked with Doug Peterson and the entire Eagles squad. Dr. Elko actually shared that he saved a text from Malcolm Jenkins that he got the morning of the Super Bowl saying, "Today, we shock the world, but we don't shock ourselves." Dr. Elko is most associated with the University of Alabama, where he's been working with Nick Saban since he was a coach at LSU. I think you're really going to enjoy this podcast. Lots of anecdotes, lots of stories, and some really, really good knowledge. Enjoy it. Dr. Elko, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing good. Just was in St. Augustine, Florida earlier. I'm in Houston right now, so I'm doing really good, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. So, it's Super Bowl week, and around here in the Philadelphia area, we've still got Eagles fever. And it was just 2 years ago that the most remarkable thing that you can come up with happened, in which the backup quarterback, a guy that's been a journeyman throughout his entire career, turned into Superman and won a Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that had never won a Super Bowl before. That's Nick Foles. You worked with him. Can you talk a little bit about how your affiliation with him began, and we can dig into it a little bit?
I was working with the Eagles, and what happened was I started talking to the team, because when they lost Carson Wentz, Vegas came out and gave them, if people remember, the longest odds of any team to win.
Right.
And everybody was saying that they weren't going to make it. And I was doing research and reading about a psychologist in Virginia named Meg J. And she had a book out at the time called Super Normal. And she came up with a concept that I never really even thought about before. And she said people that are achievers in life, they're normal, but they're super normal. And she came up with a phrase, positive anger. I never thought those phrases went together. A positive anger. And she goes, for example, like when when Martin Luther King went to Lyndon Johnson, he said, everyone in the country is going to vote right now. His positive anger changed the world. Rosa Parks says, "I'm not giving up this chair." It changed the world. So I talked to the team right at that time about positive anger. They said, "We can't do it." And then we talked about being a dog underneath the table, an underdog. And that's when some guys like Lane Johnson got that mask. Well, I'm speaking to the team, and Nick came up to me, Nick Foles, because he's the quarterback. And he goes, "I want to work with you." And so what we did was...
And this was after Carson got hurt, right?
This was after Carson got hurt.
Right.
And you have to meet people where they are. And he's a very, very spiritual, but also a religious person. So there was a story where David became the king of Israel, and I gave him this story. And I teach something called self-talk. Like I teach how to communicate with yourself. It's one of the most important things. That's kind of what my doctorate is. And there was a story where David became the king of Israel, and someone said, David, I've got your director of security. Who? Guy's name is Benaiah. What did Benaiah do to become my director of security now that I'm in Israel? He said he came face to face with a lion, and he ran right at the lion. The lion turned and fell into a pit. He jumped in the pit and killed him with bare hands. So I have Nick saying, run at the roar, be bold. I think the first game was with the Oakland Raiders. And he did not have a great game. He texted me after the game, still running at the roar, still running at the lion. Then I think the next game with the Cowboys, a little bit better, but still not that good.
Not great, yeah.
Now he's telling me the same thing. Running at the roar, be bold. We need boldness. So now we go and play the Falcons. He's a little bit better, but he keeps saying his phrase and starting to catch. Now, Frank Reich is saying it, our offensive coordinator. Now Doug Peterson saying it, the Philly special. Now everybody's bold. Now Zach Ertz is doing hashtag, be bold, run at the line. And it caught. And so now we go to the Minnesota game. He's getting juicy. By the time it got to the Super Bowl, it caught. And he was like, run at the roar, be bold. And everybody got there. And so he did it over and over and over. I have this phrase I use all the time. Your conscious mind is a Post-it note. Your subconscious mind is a supercomputer. It caught. And it caught everywhere. And the team started playing bold. And so it was a really cool thing to see. I love him. I was telling Doug the last time I was in there, our head coach, I said, the only problem I had with Nick is I sit down and meet with him. We'd be there hour, 40 minutes. I couldn't get all the work done, because this is how he was. I love him. Of course, I love Carson. And of course, he's the face of franchise. But I somehow hope Nick comes back here. He's Philadelphia. I mean, his boldness, his spirit, the way he loved the city, they loved him back. And honestly, I mean, I'm not a football analyst, but his best performances are here, and he doesn't do extremely well outside of Philadelphia. I think he's just meant for Philly myself.
It's interesting that I was at that Atlanta game, the first game of the playoffs, and I texted a friend of mine at halftime, and I said, man, the Eagles are lucky to even be in this game. This is the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen. I said, this is embarrassing. And the next thing you know, he wins the game, and you're right. He just got better. And by the time he got to the Super Bowl, he looked like a Hall of Famer.
I think what people need to understand with him, and he's just a good match for Doug, is do simple better. And, Carson Wentz is the kind of guy that the more you give him, the better. But
are you working with Carson?
Yeah, I do, but not as direct as I did Nick.
Okay.
We're going to start working coming up on connection. Everybody, coaches, players, everybody. We've got him involved. I love him. And I was in, to be honest with you, I shouldn't say this because who knows exactly where it's headed, and I can talk about it in a minute, but I was involved with bringing Carson here. And so.
Oh, that story we need to hear.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that one right after this one.
Okay.
But Nick is the kind of guy like do simple better, and they did it simply, connected well with Doug. And I just think he's meant for Philadelphia. They understand him here. He's a good fit for the city. His simplicity of mind is really good. I don't like him. I love him.
No, I do want to hear the Carson story, but I will tell you that I did speak to another coach in the NFL who shared with me when he was in St. Louis, he lost his love of football. He wasn't even the same. He was shocked that he even came back. And you're right. Maybe he is meant for Philadelphia.
I was talking to a scout from Steelers, and he said, he did pretty good at one time under Chip Kelly's offense because it was all hurry up and he didn't have time to think. And I mentioned to Doug, and Doug said, yeah, he was going to do that. And I think they constructed an offense that kept it real simple, and he didn't have to do a lot of thinking. But I love the guy. I love everything about him. I love what he stands for as a human being. He connects with all the players there. Like I said, he's Philadelphia. He just goes out and sits down and connects with people. I really am fond of him.
So how did you get involved in the recruitment of Carson Wentz? It's a pretty fabled story around here that the entire Eagles brass went down to work him out, and they fell in love with him as a person. And then I know that we had Mike Sando, who's a writer for The Athletic, onto this podcast, who used to work with John Gruden, and Gruden fell in love with Carson Wentz. So it was pretty, it was pretty evident that he caught some people's eyes. What was your role in that?
We're at the NFL Combines, and when you go to the NFL Combines, you have about 15 minutes to make a call on a guy. And so I just sat in a room, and I knew they were going for quarterbacks, and they brought in all of them. All the guys probably went the first 2 or 3 rounds. And then they came back to spend an hour with me. And I had in the room a guy that's an interesting guy there. He's actually their director of security, Dom. And I said, Dom, I'm going to bring back these guys, and I just me and you, no coaches, we're going to sit and talk with them. And I go, you're a street guy, you're a Philadelphia guy, we'll just sit with me. He's the director of security there, okay? So I kept asking Carson questions, and it's one thing he did. And then I went to Jeffrey Lurie and Howard Rose, and I go, and Duggar, that's your guy. I said, tell me the best game you ever had in your life. And every question I said, he opened up with one word. You know what it was?
I'm going to guess we.
We.
Yeah.
We cared. We came together. We kept on saying the word we. And everyone else was saying I. Kept on saying we. So I walked out and said to Jeffrey, I go, Jeffrey, you go, that's your guy. So I think they flew out the scene and they asked him, what was your record? I think it was something crazy, I'm not sure of this. I don't think he ever lost a football game until he played for the Eagles. Ever.
Wow.
I think he made one B in his life, in 8th grade. And so I think that could be in ways you're challenged if you're somebody like that, because now you want to be so much like the hero, like you want to do it all. You're used to that. But I really liked the way he kept on saying we. And I thought he flourished this year when there were players that were a little bit younger and he was able to do we. I like Carson. I think that we have a lot of special ahead of us. He plays so hard. And when he does stuff, he's trying to not let other people down. And I understand that people love what's going on in Kansas City now, and they love these different quarterbacks. I'll take Carson Wentz anytime, any day. I love him. I love it. I want Nick to come back because I like that 2-headed monster, so to speak. But I'm telling you, Carson is, I think, going to deliver big things to the city. I think he's the face of the team. I think he goes real well with what Jeffrey's trying to do with culture there. And he kept on saying the word we, and I just loved it. I love what he does. I love how he connects with our guys. I love the relationship he has with guys like Ertz, with our offensive line. I think he's a special guy.
It wouldn't surprise me if Foles was cut loose and, he signed that big contract down in Jacksonville and Minshew took over, and it looks like they're probably going to draft somebody as well. So you never know.
Nick Foles, like I said, I think he needs people around him that knows who he is and vice versa. And Doug Peterson is the kind of guy, everybody knows who Doug is now. Doug's the kind of guy who will take time to connect and know what you are. He understood what he was. He didn't all the time say, Nick, you got to come to us. Nick, we'll look at what you need. And that's the kind of guy Doug is. It works here.
So Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You know Doug in a way that most people don't, in terms of the fact that he's kind of an enigma when you think about it. I mean, when he got hired, people came out and said, of all the guys that got hired, this guy is the least qualified. Then he goes and wins a Super Bowl 2 years later. What is it about Doug that that people who follow the Eagles or watch on television or listen to sports radio would never be able to get?
There was that article written by Doug, and there was an article written by Doug, and it wasn't complimentary that, he's never done it before, and I looked at the article, and I go, Doug, I kind of agree with you. I think this is a good thing. I go, the NFL just recycle. Just recycle guys. Here it is, keep recycling guys. I go, you can do this any way you want. Do what you need. And do it any single way. And I think it's really, I think it's connection. I think he has a good relationship with Howie. They connect real well. I think he connects with our players. I think he connects with our coaches. I love this phrase, supportive autonomy. I think we did NFL. You could be Nick Saban at Alabama in college, but there you got to be supportive, in that way. But I think he does the best. Great teams have their own language. Like at Alabama, it's see a little, see a lot, see nothing. They have their own language. Doug is one of the best you've ever seen at develop a culture and a language there. And, it was like ownership. And he put the team into a small unit, and they took ownership, and he pushes ownership on the team. And he teaches ownership. And what people don't understand about Doug, he doesn't come in and do a different rah-rah talk every week. He's constantly teaching language and teaching culture, and just great at it. And if you watch him in the locker room, really good. Just does a really good job of supporting our guys, not making them feel uncomfortable, because he's mentally healthy, so he's real even. And consistency, I learned from when I was with the Steelers, there's nothing like consistency I used to see with Chuck Noll. Just the same guy. And in the NFL, I saw with Mike McCartney when I was in Green Bay, the same guy. And I just like how Doug's a real steady, consistent guy. And it's because the league's up and down and this and that and all kinds of stuff breaking loose. But he's even and the same guy coming in there. And it's so important, consistency. Commitment starts stuff, but consistency finishes. So it's his teaching of language. It's how he pulls it together. There's special people there. And how he works with the different people there is excellent. I think him and Howie do a really nice job of being a team, working together. But it's the consistency and the development culture and the language that he does there that separates him.
So as we're talking about mindset, you need a new car, you better get in the right mindset to get a good car person. You can get ripped off out there. And if you don't have somebody that you trust, it can be a major problem. I've got somebody I trust, and I hope you all will too. Several people have benefited by listening to the Killin' Me Smallz podcast and have bought cars from Kobe Fryer at Matt Blatt Kia. I've known Kobe for 35 years. In fact, little known fact, I drove him to his first ever job interview to be a car salesman. And look at him now. He runs Matt Blatt Kia, and they've got 3 locations in Toms River, Egg Harbor, and Glassboro. Check out the new Telluride, which was the Motor Trend SUV of the year. They've got over 250 pre-owned cars and trucks. Any situation can be handled with ease. Give Kobe a call, 609-706-2101, or get in touch with me through this podcast, and I will connect you.
This is Ian Rappaport from NFL Network. You're killing me, Smallz. Stay tuned for more from Mike Small.
Into college football a little bit. You've worked with Florida State, Miami, LSU, but the big school that you've spent the most time with, that have been the most connected with, is the University of Alabama. And that has been a dynasty over the last several years. What would people, and Nick Saban, I do know for a fact, wrote the foreword of your new book, which I got a chance to look at, and your new book we'll talk about in a little bit. What would people be most surprised about about Nick Saban? What's one thing that people would be shocked to know?
That he's not miserable. And I said he's so miserable. He's not that miserable, man. He has an apex that is like that way. But he's a grandfather, and believe it or not, this will shock people. He's not an unhappy person. He's a pretty happy person. He's a demanding person. He's a very, very demanding. He has something which I call the Mendoza line, which means, and let me tell you, when I coached him and I told him, I go, Nick, we're playing Notre Dame. We're winning by like 30 points, maybe more. There's 4 minutes to go. Somebody jumps offside. You lose your mind. You lose your mind. We're playing Auburn. Somebody jumps offside 7 times and you don't get upset. Go back to how you were. Be miserable again. Because after you did it one time, no one jumped offside again. Sometimes mental health and peace of mind and all that's a little overrated. I said, we don't need Gandhi coaching Alabama. And so I think that people want to say, oh, he's miserable. No, he has a standard. And once you go below that standard, he isn't copacetic. But he's not unhappy. And what people, they think, well, he's just like the Grinch. When tornadoes hit Tuscaloosa, and 50 people were killed, and I think 50 people lost their home. He goes, this place was here for you. Now we're going to be there for them. He has charity Nick Kids where he gives millions and millions of dollars away. But I think they think he's like Ebenezer or the Grinch, and he's not. That's what they'd be surprised. Now, when you watch them perform and you're watching them on the field, if somebody goes below a standard, he's a different kind of miserable. But I think that sometimes we need that. There was a great baseball player, a shortstop, but not a great hitter, named Mario Mendoza. And Bill Mazeroski said who was a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best shortstops ever, but he wasn't a good hitter. And George Brett used to look at the paper, and anybody who was below him would say, that's the Mendoza line.
Right.
In life, we look, with our health, we need a Mendoza line, as opposed to gaining a pound a year, or 2 pounds a year. In 20 years, you're 40 pounds overweight. There was a psychologist at Florida Atlantic said the average marriage deteriorates in satisfaction like a couple % a year. We married 25 years. You kind of don't know their name, but that could be dementia. In our lives, we need a Mendoza line. We don't go below this in that statement. And he draws a standard, and he stays with it.
You know what's interesting to me about him? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And that's what I like about it. But no, what they would be surprised is when I see him, we laugh, he smiles, he's a good friend. He's not the Grinch. That's what they'd be surprised.
You know, I was very fortunate for a 4-year period. I got to work with Dean Smith doing his television show. And I see some similarities in the sense that one of the things that he did that I observed, and he actually said it at one point, was he never let the team get too high or too low. So, for instance, when they were getting crushed, he was in a good mood. He was happy. Hey, that's fine. We'll get over this one. When they're up by 30 or 40, that's when he started screaming about, not taking a charge and things of that sort. I see a little bit of that in Saban. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy that's in Philadelphia. His name's Adam Grant. It's a fair comparison. But here's another thing that people have to understand. Adam Grant is in all the good business schools. There's a performance psychologist, and Adam Grant is a 10. And he came up with something. He said there's 2 kinds of people out there. One is called the strategic optimist. They see good in the future, and they do well. They see good, and they manifest good. There's something called the defensive pessimist. They see bad in the future, and they do all the things so those things don't happen. And Adam Grant says, my research says that group is even more successful. And so, Nick Saban is a defensive pessimist. Doug Peterson, strategic optimist. So my job with Nick, a lot of it is I work with him constantly, coach him on the phone. We get on the phone, and it works. My undergrad degree is one of my undergrad degrees. I went in biology, but I was in coaching, so I get to coach the coaches. And when I get on the phone with him, he does lay out what could happen wrong. And then what he does is he does all the things so that doesn't happen. In my life, personally, I'm pretty much a strategic optimist in most areas. But when it comes to a couple areas like my health, I go, yeah, Kevin, let's watch what we take into our diet. Let's watch our exercise, because I have young kids. I want to be here for them. So I guess I've evolved to be a little bit of both. But Nick very much is a defensive pessimist. And if you look at the research on those guys, they can be pretty good performers. And that's who and what he is. And I don't try to do it any different with him. I don't change it. That's the routine we do. And what he does to the team is this right here. He goes, we're going to play the game. And we don't play for 60 minutes. It's that 1 minute when you come in the locker room, and you got to look at your guys in the locker room. And after that game, are you going to feel like going over and celebrating with them and hugging them? You going to look at them and be sick in your stomach because you left something out on the field.
Well, that's a perfect segue to my next question, because I really want to get into your new book, but I do have one more Alabama question, and that's a perfect segue to it, which is, this is the first adversity Saban has seen in a long time. The team did make the playoffs. They lost to LSU, the eventual national champion. They lost to Auburn. Tua had the unfortunate injury. And, now if you look at the preseason rankings next year, Clemson and LSU are the darling of the media. Does that fuel Saban going into this year? What does that do in terms of his preparation to set up 2020?
He works nonstop. And we were talking about something. There's a lot of writing now going on about something called the infinite company, the infinite team, and the finite team. And, you look at certain organizations, and we talk about this some in Philadelphia now. You look at some companies, and they have a cause, they have a process, they have a long-term vision. I think like the Patriots. I think they do. I think the Steelers do. And I was talking to Nick before the Citrus Bowl, and, he was going, well, this team didn't go quite where we wanted. I go, Nick, there's a couple college programs, UConn, and it's an infinite program. Those guys will come on the scene, win it 1 year, then they go away. There might be some come on the scene and have a great year, and then you'll hear them again. I go, your job is to win a national championship. Your job is to have a vision and have a process and to stay on it, and then they come. And there might be a year where something happens, like the two, and you're not going to get in, but you're more kind of being infinite. We keep going. Finite means has a start and a finish, a finite game. The infinite game goes on and on and on. And so I don't think he'll work any harder because he works nonstop now. I think what he has to stay on is this is our process, this is our culture, this is how we do it, and then let the results manifest. And I talked to Doug Pearson a lot about that, and I talked to Jeffrey about it. Like, let's become a program in Philadelphia that just keeps manifesting. And that's why he got into that kind of, this is just the start. We're not got there yet. That's what we're trying to do there. And so I don't think it changed his work effort ethic at all, Mike, because I don't think he can. I mean, he works nonstop, and his coaches do. I think that he just has to get to a point where he just keeps on. You got to be a friend of yourself in this business. It's a tough business for this guy. And you have to, be honest with yourself sometime, and you have to be realistic. I mean, I hope you win national championship every year, but the other schools are coming too. You just got to stay on your process, your infinite game, your cause, your process, your vision, and let that stuff take care of itself.
Trust the process is a big thing here in Philadelphia as well. And yeah, now I could honestly listen to you tell stories about some of the work you've done with these guys for days. I'm very fortunate that I work with an organization that is using you to help drive mindset within the organization.
But really what we've got to do, let me tell you what happened, what I did with the book, is I really wanted to write a book about the whole concept of, when someone says the word faith, we go down the road of religiosity. And I'm a very spiritual guy, but that's not what I'm talking about here. This book is called Believing is Seeing. And it really is getting to the whole standpoint of coming in and having high expectations and having faith in what we're doing. And not just having faith in what we're doing, but let our actions demonstrate that we have faith. And I just think that, you turn on TV all the time now and everything's so cynical. Everything's gotten to a point where I think we've gotten to a point where we've lost our faith in one another. And even like when I talk to you guys on what you're doing with your company, what a wonderful thing you're doing. You're giving people peace of mind. Have faith in what you're doing. And I noticed that as I keep on having faith in my children, I just keep watching them flourish. So Believing is Seeing is a book as written about, like Nick Foles said, we win the Super Bowl. He kept on saying, even though how I'm playing, faith is the key. And faith is, here's a story that I tell people, say in the book. I've got a neighbor of mine, and I don't know if you've ever heard this country western song. My wife and I found my best friend, and I miss him.
Yeah.
That's what kind of happened to him. His wife leaves him. He's in Columbus, Ohio. His name is my neighbor. He moves to Pittsburgh, gets married, has a Down syndrome child, light of his life, Emily. He's walking, Mike, across the street up in Pittsburgh, up in Mount Washington. A woman hits him, and she's going 40 miles an hour. They give him a day to live. They said, no, he probably won't make the week. No, he's going to live. He's going to be blind and quadriplegic. No, he's going to be fine. I go, Lee. I go see him after. And it was a recovery. I go, how did you do that? He goes, I believe in spite of the evidence. I watched the evidence change. Now, there's different laws out there. The law of aerodynamics, the law of gravity, what goes up must come down. Law of gravity. Then there's the law of aerodynamics that breaks the law of gravity. That you can go up and stay up with aerodynamics. Down in Tallahassee, Florida, I read this down in Tallahassee, Florida. And I've read about this happen over a dozen times. A car falls on a little girl in Tallahassee. There was a 77-year-old grandmother, Mike, in the yard. She picked up the car. Now, I don't know if you've heard of those. She picked up the car, pulled the daughter out. Now, I can only bench press a hoagie. But here this woman is, she picks up the car. The law of faith breaks down all other laws. Like Doug Pearson used to say constantly when it's the Super Bowl, an individual can make a difference, a team can make a miracle. Well, we can come together, and the problem we have today is we're split on everything. We're split on everything. But if we can come together with faith, and the book is really a lot of examples like that, where people have had faith in their past. I was spoken about Valdosta, Georgia yesterday, and the sheriff was in there. And I get these stories all the time. And my last book out was called The Sender. And we had a wonderful night. People flew in, a couple of people flew in a private jet for us to be together. I didn't even know them. But it was really off of my book, The Sender, which is a novel about a friend of mine, Chuck Pagano. But it really happened just that way, where he had cancer. He called me. I sent him these messages every day. He was in a cancer ward. He's not a defense coordinator up at the Colts. He was head coach. I was a defense coordinator at the Bears. He was with the Colts. And so these people came in and we talked about The Sender, but there was the sheriff there. And he goes, look, I'm in bed with my wife and I get a text from this woman I haven't seen, talked to, heard for 15 years. And she needs help. Something happened on Facebook and she needs help. He said, I looked it up on Facebook. It sounded crazy to me, but it did happen. I haven't seen her for 15 years. I live in this little town, 130,000. He goes, a little restaurant. There's 8 chairs there. He goes, I'm just going, and I'm like thinking, now how do I help her? I'm walking down the street. And he said, I got to find a way to sit down and talk to her. He said, I walk in that restaurant, she's sitting there. He goes, I haven't seen her for 15 years. That's kind of what this book's about. Malcolm Jacobs sends me this text. He goes, it was the morning of the Super Bowl. He goes, later today we will shock the world. But make no bones about it, we won't shock us.
Did he really?
So before
wow.
I got the text still. He goes, today we will shock the world, but make no bones about it, we won't shock us.
Wow.
So what's the point? Did the Eagles do well and then get faith? Or did they have faith that made no sense, that no one else really believed in other than the city of Philadelphia, and then the victory came?
You have so many learnings that you've shared with us that I've had a chance, so what, now what, and so many different sayings that really just change the way you. My favorite is, you want mindset, set your mind, stick with it. I love that. How can people get your book and how can people follow you?
Go to drelko.com and first of all, thanks for what you're doing here. Thanks for being a blessing. You're a talent. It's really amazing what you're doing. This is really, one of the things they can do to get me is just keep on listening to this interview. Really nice job.
I've really enjoyed it.
No, this is excellent. Go to drelko.com and we have something they get for free called the Monday Cup of Inspiration. We send it every Monday to 100,000 people. It's
amazing. Yeah, I love it.
You can go to Amazon and get our books. You can go to drelko.com and get our books. They're on there as well. You can go, we have CDs and download programs. We have one right now that's extremely popular called How to Have Your Best Year Ever. We had a company just ordered 200 of those because the one guy I listened to had a restaurant chain and said, this changed up my life. So get the best year ever. That's one that they can get. The Sender is a book that is a novel that really what happened there is Chuck Pagano called me about 2 o'clock in the morning. What I feel best about is when people call me like Andy did and say, I'm hurting. Can you come spend time with me? Like, let's be there for each other. Be necessary to somebody. So Pagano calls me 2 o'clock in the morning and says, Elko, I got leukemia. I said, what? And hey, I want to take a big goal. Him and I were in Miami together, the University of Miami. Our goal is to get no player arrested. We're shooting for the stars. So Pagano comes to me and goes, Elko, I got leukemia. He's the head coach of the Colts. I said, well, what you do? You realize when you get it today? He said, we just lost a jacker, but my outside linebacker stood up. Mathis said, there's no self-pity in football. Take the lessons and move on. He asked us, there's no self-pity in cancer. Start my IV. So when he sent me that or talked to me, he said, I'll be in here and I'm not leaving here for a couple months. And what I decided to do is instead of recording every day to try to get his spirit up, to get his faith up to fight the cancer. And that became, those messages I sent him became my book, The Sender. And if anybody's out there hurting, if anybody's fighting through something like cancer, I think I just sent you the book. You probably didn't get it yet. If anybody's hurting, I've gotten more people. Like the talk I did last night with just a bunch of people that read The Sender to want to come in and talk about that book. That book is one that I get a lot of feedback on. That I was in a bad spot. One woman just said this was there last night. She goes, I was at MD Anderson. I was taking chemo. I was down on the ground, thrown up, and the worst day ever. And someone visited me afterwards, and I read that book, and I just started to instantly feel different. And so that book is really about messages I sent to somebody who was fighting through cancer. And the book, Believing is Seeing, will be out about late March. And they'll be able to get that on Books A Million. That will be, you can tell I'm country. They're going to have a first released in Walmart, Sam's Club, and
It comes with a side. It comes with a side of hash browns and grits. But no, I'll tell you what. I'll make sure that. I
guess I'm Dr. Phil Billy because that's where they're going to release it.
I will make sure that our listeners know that when it comes out for sure. Dr. Elko, I can't thank you enough for joining the Killin Me Smallz podcast. I've loved getting to know you, and I think people are really going to benefit from reading your books. And I hope they've enjoyed the podcast as much as I've enjoyed doing it.
You're a gift. What you did and how you did this is excellent. It's great. I love Philadelphia. I love being a part of the Eagles. So thanks for doing this.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Dr. Kevin Elko as much as I enjoyed speaking with him. Remember, his new book comes out at the end of March. It'll be his 7th book, and definitely one worth reading and picking up. Man, I enjoyed doing this podcast with you once again today. If you enjoyed this and podcasts like this, please subscribe on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. That's Killin, Killin, me, Smallz with a Z, and we will make sure that you get some good content, and give me a follow on Twitter. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.